Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Cordes, the new Executive Director for the San Francisco Transit Riders. I'm honored to welcome you to San Francisco Transit Riders' 5th Annual Transit Week. This is truly a transit week like none other. I'm sure we are all wishing we could gather together and celebrate. Actually, if you're anything like me, you're dreaming about getting on Muni and heading somewhere fun. Next year, we promise. I'm really glad to have been invited to join the San Francisco Transit Riders team because Kat, Eric, Zach, our organizers, B-Rod, Grace, and Claire, are terrific and dedicated to the work of making Muni better for our riders and our community. A better Muni is good for the environment. It's good for social equity, and it advances social justice. It provides a place for us to see each other and embrace the rich diversity of our city. Obviously, this is not a normal year. I'm coming to you from the workshop rather than a fabulous party. Among all the other things going on, we know that Muni is facing severe budget problems and service cuts, and we want to work together to overcome the challenges that are before us. It's going to take all of us working hard together to make sure that Muni recovers. We want to use the challenges that we face to make sure that Muni comes back more efficient and with better service than before. We can do this, but only if we do it together. I hope you'll join us in the coming weeks and months to support a strong comeback for Muni. For that to happen, we'll be championing adequate funding, transit street priority, and of course, safety and cleanliness. Today, you can help us pass Measure RR and Proposition 15. They're both on the November 3rd ballot, which will be the first steps in making sure that Muni and public transit around the Bay Area get needed funding for their operating services. After the election, we'll be getting to work on more long-term, diverse, and sustainable funding for Muni. We're using these challenging times to lay the groundwork for a permanent transit priority on our streets. This will allow Muni's resources to be used more efficiently and to serve more riders more reliably. We need you to work with us as we make sure that every emergency pilot project to speed up Muni is successful. Last but not least, we need to have larger conversations about the safety of riding Muni in the era of COVID. We're going to be asking important questions and looking for quality answers. We'll be focused on helping Muni come out on the other side of this crisis with a reputation for safety and cleanliness. And of course, a cleaner system attracts more riders. Obviously, we have our work cut out for us, but this is not new. We've had plenty of work to do since we were founded 10 years ago. Tonight, we're here to celebrate some of the heroes of Muni and public transit in San Francisco. These are the people who work every day to make Muni better for all riders, despite the challenges. These are the people we're fighting for when we want to see Muni fully funded and supported. Before we get to the awards, we want to take a little step back and hear from some of the people who over the last 10 years have been an irreplaceable part of our work and our effectiveness.
When I moved to San Francisco at age 16, my dad didn't have a car, and if he did, he wasn't going to drive me around. Like, he had his own job. So I had to just navigate the city through Muni. I got to know the city through Muni, so that's why I love it. But I also saw the challenges growing up in Visitation Valley, where there would be like so many of us waiting for the 8, and by the time it even got to us, it was already too full, and they would pass us up. If I missed the 8, I had to wait like another 10 minutes and hope that one's not too packed. If it is, just squeeze myself in. I'm like, I don't care, I'm getting on. And that's what a lot of our attitudes were as a transit riders out there, because we're like, if I don't make it, we're going to be so late for work. I'm not trying to lose my job.
Was taking the bus to work every day, and it would just take unbelievable amounts of time, like an hour or so. And it was like 4 miles. And I was just like, how can, ostensibly the most progressive city in the world or in the country, have such a terrible transit system. I'd kind of given up on the bus for my morning commute, but I wasn't giving up on the bus as an idea. I'm still a little unclear about the transit signal priority. I would occasionally take the T, and just sitting at 4th and King, waiting for that train to take the left turn was the longest, most grueling and frustrating time on transit every time without fail. It was like a 5-minute wait. It's just like, when the train comes, give it a green left-hand turn and let it go before the cars. Like, we can do this. I was seeking out some organizations that were maybe focused on, making the bus better. I kind of went to a couple of different groups that were, I think had been either around too long or were just starting, that hadn't really gotten off the ground. And at one of them, none of them I felt like was the right fit. And at one of them, I met this guy, Dave Snyder, who said, I'm starting this organization called the San Francisco Transit Riders Union. You should come to our meetings.
We started it as a project of Livable City. There was really no effective grassroots transit advocacy organization like the city had for bicycling and like the city had for walking. It just didn't exist.
It was this tiny room, and I think most of the people that were at that meeting were standing up because it was so small. And I think maybe it was about 20 people, mostly male. There were a few women. It was just, I'd never been to anything like that before, and this was my first stab at being a part of an advocacy group, and for something that I really care about, which is transit, because I'm not a driver. I've never learned to drive, and to be honest, the city has allowed me to get around school, work, and just general life activities without having to use a car. And I grew up here, and I know we're doing this now because I think it's about to be 10 years since we've started the organization, and to be honest, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but at the same time, with what what the organization has achieved thus far, it's been awesome.
One of the reasons why I passed it on, my heart is in social justice. My heart is in community organizing. My heart is in anything that gets cars out of cities because of the horrible impact that cars have. We did pretty well, I think, for a short time, and then people who took it over after me did even better.
There were folks before transit riders in the transit advocacy space. There's Rescue Muni and there's other folks. And so different groups of folks have always cared about transit. But what was nice was to see the original group kind of come together. And I think transit riders morphed, and grew and became more of a formal organization. And I was just so happy to see that happen.
You get really good at moderating your own advocacy to get achievable wins. So you begin to ask for things that are just a little bit more than what the politicians want to do, but not too much more, so that they have a reasonable chance of the politicians saying yes.
Between the new buses and trains and the red carpet lanes that have been rolled out around the city, that is very much has been a huge boon to transit and like a huge win for the transit riders. The voice is in the room for collective action and for progressive change as it pertains to transportation.
Right now, there are almost no riders, and yet the essential workers are getting around on public transportation. So if we didn't have public transportation, we wouldn't have food. Think of it that way. We wouldn't have, hospital workers if not for public transportation. So Jarrett Walker is also sort of, saying this is kind of a revolutionary time and we need to start thinking about public transportation a little bit differently than we have in the past.
The results are clear. We see much better reliability in travel times on our red carpet, corridors, really creating the service levels to match people's demands. So, and needs, and kind of like, if you build it, they will come.
Myra, I want to present to you this Rider First Award to you and your team for keeping riders and Muni safe and scaling up your cleaning practices during the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
just wanted to reiterate that I'm accepting this award on behalf of the whole cleaning unit system-wide. The transit car cleaners have collectively done an amazing job during this pandemic in keeping the coaches sanitized and clean for the not only the operators but our riding public. We do this every day. Each time the bus go out and come back in, we sanitize and clean each vehicle. We have almost 1,000 pieces of equipment system-wide that we sanitize as a team every day. So thank you very much for the recognition. We really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the cleaning staff hard work and dedication. Thank you.
Dixon Yee, I want to present this Rider First Award to you and the entire PPE team for going the extra mile during the pandemic to keep operators and riders safe. Here you go.
I want to thank you for the award. I also want to thank my crew, DSW workers that's all here in the Burke warehouse. We put together all these PPE supplies for drivers, for agencies, the MTA, and the city of San Francisco.
Sam, I want to give you this Rider First Award for your work as a cable car operator, jumping in to work as an ambassador to make sure riders know where they're going and can navigate the system during the pandemic. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of my cable car brothers for this reward. When this pandemic first hit, we were out here and coming down the hill, we noticed it was a ghost town. Then a couple of weeks later, they shut the cable car down and we ended up moving to different positions, mainly drivers helping out in the city. And most of us drove for about 2.5 months, and they slowly brought some of the equipment back. So then we became land ambassadors. So we were out here directing the people, showing them how to catch certain buses and different routes. We give out masks to those who don't have masks, that way we keep people on the bus and the operators safe. We're just out here to try and help everyone out, while this is, something that none of us has ever experienced in our life. So that's it, and thank you once again.
I'm Peter Straushe. I'm on the board of San Francisco Transit Riders and have been on the board for about 10 years. And what a lot of you may not know is before that, I had a tempestuous 30-year career in service planning at the MTA.
Julie Kirschbaum, I'm the transit director at SFMTA, and I've been doing it for about 13 years, which many of you may not know, really started initially, came on to learn everything that I could from Peter and kind of build on his 30-year legacy.
I was asked to, think about what has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and I'm struck both by the changes and personally by some of the things that haven't changed. When I first got involved in transit riders, I started working on stuff that I had never been interested in before, which was coming up with the money to keep transit funded and to keep operations maintained. And that's a need that has certainly stayed with us and is, as prominent now as it ever was. But in terms of what's changed, there's a lot of things that we were really struggling with 10 years ago that have become a lot more accepted, such as the need to give transit priority on our streets, is something that we've had MTA's had tremendous success with over the last 10 years, that the transit riders has, offered a lot of support for. And that's been a huge change. But, 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, it was really a struggle just to get people to accept that transit should have those privileges on the street.
I think another change that I've seen happen is, even though we're still grossly underfunded, I think that there is more of an acceptance of what things cost and less of a tendency to take shortcuts. And that's also something that I think the agency had to really evolve to. That when you're so strapped for resources, you're often cornered into making some very difficult choices that have long-term consequences. And what we're trying to do right now is make those trade-offs much more transparent so that people understand that the consequence of not funding an agency properly it takes decades to recover from.
We know in 2020, everything we know about life has been thrown for a loop, and that certainly includes how a transit agency is run. But what sort of things do you think you're learning now in the middle of this crisis that are good lessons to carry forward into the future?
I've been so incredibly impressed by how resilient and creative our staff is. We've essentially had to rebuild the transit system on the fly 3 or 4 times, in this emergency. And staff keeps approaching it with new creativity and new problem-solving skills. One of the things I think that this has shown is just how tremendously resilient our bus system is. And we were able to immediately change from a system that was completely focused on downtown to a system that gets people where they need to go for essential trips. We had to go from managing to schedules to managing to headways. And what I mean by that is we previously would tell operators at multiple points throughout the route, this is where you should be at 8:05, this is where you should be at 8:08, this is where you should be at 8:15. And when all travel stopped and we went from a very congested city to an uncongested city, the schedules made no sense. A headway-based schedule means that the operators are leaving every 8 minutes or every 10 minutes, depending on the frequency of the route, and they're driving to the conditions. And we're finding that it delivers much better service to our customers. Our headway adherence on our routes that operate every 15 minutes or better is over 90% right now, which we're really proud to be delivering such good service under such challenging conditions.
Thank you, Transit Riders, for the award. I appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to everybody who helped on the project, giving out the mask, went above and beyond, went the extra mile. Thank you for engaging with the community. Thank you for engaging with the operators. It's the best we could do.
It was actually an honor for me that I got a phone call to see if I wanted to take on this position for the PUI project. I really didn't know what to expect until I met the rest of the operators and part of this team. I felt safe and confident that we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, we're going to do it good.
With what what the organization has achieved thus far, it's been awesome.
30 by 30 is an awesome campaign.
That 30 by 30, that's the answer, right?
30 by 30. Like, why can't we get from one end of this small city to the other end in such a short amount of time? It would be great if 30 by 30 happened sooner than later, because that I think is actually doable now, whereas before I was like, that's pipe dream, not gonna happen. But it's like, as the network gets refined and maybe as more of these, street improvements happen where flow is better, maybe we take out some parking and maybe more bike lanes, I think holistically there's room for transit to be better. There's room for transit. I think I see good things in the future for us.
When Muni runs on time and you're actually on it, that's like one of my favorite feelings in San Francisco ever.
Bus rapid transit is only so effective when it's real platinum level bus rapid transit, right? With transit signal priority that actually works, with bus only lanes, typically center running, that are protected from traffic in some way, with stop consolidation, with all door boarding, and they're doing a great job in San Francisco, but there's a lot more to be done to get it to Curitiba level, right? Creating a seamless system that Seamless Bay Area is pushing for. Shout out to them. And really just like thinking about the system as one.
I think one of the roles of advocacy groups is to represent a vision that is inspiring, that is necessary, and more than what's politically possible today, so that it becomes politically possible.
As someone working with the organization and as someone who is a regular transit rider, I'm like, I could see that what we were doing was affecting something.
I'm so super proud of all that we have accomplished over the past 10 years. We went from a little idea in the brain of a man who is a bicycle rider to a really powerful advocacy organization with a super strong outreach to communities of concern, portion of who we are, to a mission that is equity and rider driven. We want to be rider centric. We're here for the rider. We want the voices of all the riders. It's a very inclusive and wonderful organization with a wonderful board and a wonderful new executive director. And I'm just so excited about the future and what it holds and a positive role that we can play in making sure that public transportation becomes the powerhouse that it needs and that it gets the credit that it's due.
The energy of this great coalition of folks, whether it's the board or the volunteers or the staff or whomever, I think that's where you get, not much more than a home base for transit, but you get a movement. Who knows right now, but I'm pretty confident that wherever sort of we go, we're going to need transit. We're going to need it in vibrant and growth times, back when the congestion was high and we needed transit to provide that lifeline for people, but also that efficient way to kind of fight climate change and have a more livable city. But especially when times are constrained, and folks are struggling, we absolutely have to ensure that lifeline is there. And going forward, either way, we have to just keep building on our strong and sound base.
Happy anniversary, San Francisco Transit Riders.
Happy 10th anniversary, San Francisco Transit Riders.
Happy 10th anniversary, San Francisco Transit Riders.
It's Transit Week.
And I wish I could be with you in person to celebrate public transportation and commit to helping our transit system recover.
But I have my birthday hat ready to go. I want to wish the San Francisco Transit Riders a very happy 10th birthday as we celebrate a decade of tremendous leadership.
At its best, public transportation supports essential workers,
gets us where we're going affordably,
and improves our air quality.
As people across San Francisco face record unemployment and financial insecurity,
we need reliable transit now more than ever.
Transit riders are essential to our economy
and to the city's livability.
Transit is essential to get us all where we're going.
So let's work together for transit that is funded,
reliable,
and safe. Happy 10th anniversary. See you on Muni.
Happy Transit Week. I'm Jeff Tumlin, the director of the SFMTA. Happy 110th anniversary to Muni, and happy 10th anniversary to the San Francisco Transit Riders Union. Thank you for all that you do advocating on behalf of our customers. And thank you as well for giving out awards to my staff, hard-working people who have gone so far above and beyond the call of duty during these compounded tragedies in order to make sure that essential workers can get to work and that customers can have a decent experience despite the conditions that we are all facing. Muni is facing the worst crisis in its history. And we're going to need support from all of you to make sure that it survives and hopefully that we're able to bring it back better. Most importantly, we're going to need to continue to build trust with San Franciscans so that we can Get to the 2022 ballot in order to get the revenue that we need in order to restore and expand service that San Francisco needs. We'll be relying upon all of you for your support. Meanwhile, we're continuing to invest in speed and reliability improvements on our essential lines, ensuring that Muni isn't stuck as congestion returns to San Francisco. We're also continuing to use headway management in order to make sure that buses are evenly spaced. We'll continue to invest in excellent frequency on our essential lines in order to minimize the number of essential workers who are left behind at the curb. We'll be investing in much better customer information systems, addressing deferred maintenance in the subway and elsewhere in the system, and hopefully delivering a rail system more efficient and more reliable than before. Thank you so much for your support.
We have a few more awards to give and a few more key people to hear from. Tonight, we've only heard from a handful of the tons of people who have given their time and energy when and where they were able to help us grow. From being on the outside looking in, we have a voice at the table now for transit riders. We have city leadership that understands the importance of public transit. We brought over 50 neighborhood advocacy and merchant groups from across the city together to sign on our plan for a strong transit recovery. We are building our membership and we're organizing communities across the city. Coming up on the program, we'll hear some more about the serious challenges we face. We need to keep growing in order to meet those challenges. We need you to say along with us that public transit is essential and that you'll add your voice to support it. Please go to sftransit-riders.org and get involved today.
Enrique Aguilar, I want to present you with this Rider First Award for excellent visual communication in communicating important routes and rider information to communities across San Francisco. So here's your award and SFTR t-shirt. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Enrique Aguilar, a public information officer. I work on the transit communications team. I started out creating videos to promote and just to let our customers know about the outreach that the SFMTA does for the community. An added benefit of having animations and visual graphics is serving the community and also breaking those language barriers. Visuals, graphics are mostly universal, and with these graphics, I do tend to use symbols and things that can be visually shown to people without having to speak a word or write a sentence.
You know, if you look at the 3-year window right now, I think, you know, what I'm mostly concerned about is the transit recovery phase, you know, and a large part of that right now is funding, you know, how we secure the funding to keep the buses, you know, literally rolling.
I would strongly agree that we have no more urgent issue than funding. So many aspects of our budget have changed as a result of COVID, including fare collection, which continues to be a major risk to our ability to move forward. I'm also really nervous about the kind of connections that people now have to their car. There's a lot of people who have the privilege to drive that are choosing to do so. And that really pushes us from, you know, a virtuous cycle where transit is getting faster and more frequent and more appealing, and to the risk of the streets becoming more congested, transit dragging more, and then becoming, you know, increasingly unappealing. And so getting people back out of their cars, protecting transit in the meantime from what is going to be growing congestion, I think is also a kind of a tremendous hurdle that we face over the next 3 years, and one I'm very anxious about. Once you get used to driving, there's a lot of great things about driving. You know, it's easy, it's quick, it doesn't work for our system, it doesn't work for a city of our density, but at an individual level, I think there's going to be people who were used to taking transit on a kind of a daily basis that are going to have to, you know, hopefully get back into that habit. And we're going to have to provide an even higher quality service, I think, to attract them out of their cars.
Thank you so much, San Francisco Transit Riders, for this award. I'm really honored, and I'm happy to accept it on behalf of the Block 3 Peer Resources students at Lowell High School.
Well, how to make Lowell a place that the many communities within San Francisco can go to, and focusing specifically on Black and Brown communities because we know that they're underrepresented within the school. Lowell is far away. It's on the west side of the city, and it's not very accessible with ease for kids in the east side of town, which is where many Black and Brown students populations live. And so kids will say, I don't want to go there because it's too far away. So we thought, if we can work on transportation, that could encourage more students to apply and attend Lowell, but also the kids that are currently at Lowell, we just make it an easier experience for them to be at school. It can take students an hour plus to get across town. So the students in my class that take the 29 said this would be a way to take care of one of the inequities within the school is working on transportation to get to and from school.
Hi, I'm Kat with San Francisco Transit Riders, and it is my great pleasure to present this next award to Jason Lee, Program Manager for the Next Generation Customer Information System. The award is for the biggest improvement in customer information in 2 decades, which it'll probably be by the time it's all implemented. Jason has worked tirelessly for at least the past 3 years on designing the specifications for a robust customer information system that will deliver real benefits to transit riders. This information system will provide riders with the tools they need to take control of their trips on public transit. So Jason Lee, congratulations, and thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, Kat. I'm humbled to receive this award from the San Francisco Transit Riders. Involving extensive public outreach, our Next Generation Customer Information System is a community-driven project that we hope will improve the customer experience for Muni riders through more accurate vehicle arrival predictions and better information in multiple languages on transfers, alternative routes, vehicle occupancy, real-time detours and service changes, and accessibility. As transit looks to rebuild during these uncertain times, riders need this information now more than ever. San Franciscans will also benefit from graphical signs and a new mobile app that prioritizes transit and sustainable transportation choices. Thanks to advocacy from the San Francisco Transit Riders, we are excited that this project will also feature more visible double-sided signs at key locations throughout the city. If you walked up to a sign and you saw that your Muni bus was coming in 20 minutes, what would you do? Versus if you saw a sign, you saw your route was coming in 20 minutes, and then we offered an alternative route a few blocks away that was coming sooner, whether you would actually take Muni or take some other form of transportation. What we found that was really exciting was that over 80% of the people chose the alternative route. San Francisco is really lucky because it has an extensive route network where there are a lot of alternative routes, where you can access a bus a few blocks away that goes in the same direction as to where you want to go. And so we really want to take advantage of that robust network. So we're very excited to have that alternative route information in the Next Generation Customer Information System. We really appreciate having the San Francisco Transit Riders as partners in this endeavor.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's your 10-year? What's your 10-year vision?
What's my 10-year vision?
Yeah, you go first. I'll go
Oh,
second.
God. It's hard to say. You know, I think we're becoming ever more interwoven regionally, you know, and I think one thing that we need to see is our transit systems working together more closely.
I also am excited about the idea of a regional system that is more cohesive and seamless for users. And also that in San Francisco, we continue to maintain really high quality, frequent service. I think that plays to our strengths, and we want to continue to foster that, but in a way that's protected from traffic. I hope restaurants continue to spill into the street. I think COVID has shown us that the right of way isn't sacred for cars, and that there's a lot of things that we can do with it. And I think we're going to see businesses become allies in sort of our fight for roadway space. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, I think, what's happening in terms of parklets, in terms of restaurants expanding into parking space, also offers a little hope in terms of how people view the automobile in the recovery phase. Some people may be using cars more right now, but parking spaces used to be sacrosanct, and parking spaces are not sacrosanct anymore, and it shows that, for everyone who may be falling back on the automobile, there seem to be a lot more people who are learning that they can live without the automobile and doing less with the automobile than they used to.
I also really hope we have a new train control system in 10 years. And that, we can really say that, we've campaigned all of the risks out of the subway, and that, we can travel through the densest part of our city in a seamless and reliable way. So I'm in addition to all the kind of big picture stuff, I'm also super excited for that. Keep doing what you guys are doing. I appreciate that you guys are both project focused and policy focused. We need a really strong coalition around funding, because that absolutely is affecting us at a system level. But also every single parking space has a constituency, and every project has its own complexity. And so really bringing out the voices of transit riders who I think for too long haven't played a central role in decision making and trade-offs for our mobility is key.
It's hard to imagine San Francisco without Muni. From our cable cars to our zero-emission electric buses, our historic streetcars to our metro trains, transit is a big part of what makes San Francisco, San Francisco. But transit is about even more than our identity. It's about the fires burning around us, the heat waves we're seeing every year now, and the future of our planet and our kids. Transportation is the single biggest source of carbon emissions in San Francisco, and there's no solution to the climate crisis without public transit.
Now more than ever, we need strong, committed, visionary, tenacious transit advocacy. Transit is in a world of hurt right now in terms of the collapse of transit ridership and revenue, the lack of adequate support coming from the federal government, the need for our state to do more, and for us to do more locally.
Public transit is a fundamental part of our economic recovery, and we have to ensure it's safe for Muni riders and operators, who are crucial to keep the city moving. And we have to ensure it's fully funded, fast, and reliable.
Public transportation has been serving San Franciscans to get them to work, school, shopping, and for navigating our city. For our transit-dependent riders and so many of our essential and frontline workers, Muni is a lifeline, one that literally keeps the city running. I am committed to pushing for strategies and tools that put people first.
It's about the nurse, the teacher, the waiter, the checker at your local grocery store, who shouldn't have to own a car or pay a private company just to get to work.
As we navigate our emergency response and rebuild our transit system, it is important that we look at leveraging all resources available in the transportation toolkit and to think creatively and collaboratively.
Mobility is a human right and public good, and reliable, fast, and fully funded transit is a top priority for me and for the city and county of San Francisco.
We will come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we need to make sure that as we come out of it, that these transit systems, not just Muni, but BART and Caltrain and AC Transit and BTA and all of the other amazing systems that make our region what it is, we need to make sure that these systems still exist and are able to get right back up and going. If we start losing some of our transit systems or decimating them, it's going to be hard to get them back up, it's going to be expensive to get them back up, and it will deeply harm our economy and the vibrancy of our community. Public transportation helps define what San Francisco is. We are at an inflection point. We need to recommit. Let's fight for transit. Let's keep it strong. And I'm going to stand with you every step of the way.
Transit Week 2020 looks differently than any of us could have expected. Hopefully, it will be one where we affirm our commitment to equity in this roadmap to recovery.
Thank you, San Francisco Transit Riders, and thank you to all our essential Muni workers for everything you do every day to make that commitment a reality.
Thank you all for spending this time with us. Thanks again to all our awardees for all their hard work on behalf of transit riders across San Francisco. We really appreciate you. Thanks also to our generous sponsors who make our work possible all year long and who are great partners. Our sponsors this year include Bay Area Air Quality Management District, Google, Salesforce, IBEW Local 6, Jacobs Engineering, San Francisco County Transportation Authority, Swiftly, and Spin. Again, we can't take on the challenges we face without all of you. Please sign up now to stay informed and make a strong transit recovery possible. We look forward to the day when we can see you all on the bus again. Thank you.